This is Cruise Radio.
Cruise Radio is brought to you in part by tripinsurance.com. Travel insurance done right by the people who know travel insurance. Get a quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida.
This is
Cruise Radio. Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. On this week's show, a review of Holland America's Oosterdam, and staff writer Richard Sims is here with Cruise News. Jumping right to him now. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Doug.
So we kick things off with some big changes coming to one of the most popular destinations in the Bahamas.
Yeah, I never thought I'd say this, Doug, but soon Half Moon Cay is going away. Okay, that's not quite true, but I'm betting that's how some of the more like clickbaity folks out there are going to sell it. What's really happening is that Half Moon is getting a new name and it's being divided into a south and north side. The south side will serve Holland American guests and the north side will serve Carnival Cruise Line guests. The new name will be Relax Away Half Moon Cay, although I am 100% sure that nobody will actually call it that. Everybody except for the cruise line will still call it Half Moon Cay. The changes are going to take place over the next couple of years, with probably the biggest change being that they will have a pier for Carnival side of the island, which will allow guests direct access, while Holland America guests will continue to arrive via tender. And not only that, but the pier on Carnival side will be big enough to welcome Excel class ships. So, that's a big improvement for them. Other changes to both sides will involve, exactly what you would expect. New dining areas, cabanas, spiffed up beaches, some restaurants. They haven't released all of the details yet, so we'll definitely have more details coming in the next few, I would say, months probably, but it's not going to really take effect until, I don't know when the renaming will take effect, but it's not all going to be done until basically sometime in 2026. So there's plenty of time for us to continue reporting on what these changes will entail. But that's coming to an island near you.
What's interesting here, and I get that Carnival has a lot bigger ships than Holland America line, but the demographic tends to skew older on Holland America ships, and a lot of trouble with people getting from the ship to the actual tender itself. And then a windy day, it's going to have to skip the port. So interesting dynamic here, how they're going to move forward with this.
I'm kind of surprised by that too, because as you sort of alluded to, Holland America does have the older demographic. And so you would think that they would want to make it as sort of easy as possible. And a pier certainly makes it much easier than does tendering, but, we'll see how this plays out. I mean, maybe somewhere down the line, they'll add another pier over there. Maybe they will, add to the existing pier and transfer people over. But for right now, the pier is going to be for Carnival Cruise Line guests.
And in other Carnival news, passengers got quite a bit of a shock when a couple of prices went up on some really, really popular features.
Yeah, folks wanting to purchase the Cheers package will have to pony up a little bit more, and they won't get a break based on the length of their sailing, which was true in the past. If you were doing a 5-day cruise, it was a different price than it was if you were doing an 8-day cruise. And it looks like all of the cruises will have the same basic price now. I think the thing that bothers me here is that they bumped the price up about 16, 18% without any notice. Usually they say, and I've had this happen, they'll say, hey, if you have a cruise coming up and want to lock in the lower price, get it before such and such date because that's when the price is going to go up. And they didn't do that here. They just kind of raised the price. That's kind of surprising to me given how they've handled things in the past. Anyway, pricing wise, the package is now going to cost about $12 more per day, making it $82.54 per person per day if you buy it in advance, and $88.44 per person per day if you purchase it on board. That does include the gratuities wrapped into the price. But again, whether you're doing a short cruise or a long cruise, it's going to be that same price. There is no break. And again, this is apparently already in effect. So it's not a situation where if you're sailing, 6 months down the road, you can take advantage of getting the price before it goes up. So that's kind of not awesome. The same thing is true of the Wi-Fi package. That's also going to be costing more on a per day basis with the basic social package, which is probably the most popular one. And the one that Carnival really encourages people to have as opposed to no package, because it's really designed as almost as a promotional tool so that people can post pictures on their various social medias. That's why they call it the social package, which is obviously good advertising for Carnival. But if you want to help Carnival promote by buying this package, it is going to cost you much as more. The basic social package is going from $15.30 per day to $18.70 per day if you purchase it in advance. If you buy it on board, it's going to be $18 per day, or no, it was $18 a day. Now it's going to be $22 per day if you purchase it on board. So, we get the quarterly reports and we constantly talk about how much money they're making hand over fist, and that a lot of that money comes from onboard spending, which includes things like the casino dining packages, but it also includes if you're buying the drinks package on board or the Wi-Fi package on board. So I have to assume that we will see another glowing financial report when Carnival releases their next figures, and it will be at least in part because of this new price increase.
It has been fascinating watching these prices get notched up since 2022, like the Wi-Fi, for example, up 43 to 80%.
It's the law of supply and demand. If they raised the price and they saw that people weren't buying it, then they might rethink it. But, people are going to buy it. The Cheers package is crazy popular. And they also know that in this day and age, most people need the internet. We try and disconnect, but we're terrible at it. We are just, as human beings, we are terrible at disconnecting, and we want our internet while we're on board.
There was a little bit of a scare on an MSC cruise ship because of a small fire that broke out.
We talk all the time about how fire is a cruise ship's number one enemy. It's like water to the Wicked Witch of the West, because you got to talk about Wicked these days or else, you're not relevant. Anyway, this was thankfully a very small fire, which broke out in a generator room on one of the top decks. According to MSC, this happened on the evening of December 8th aboard the Seaside as it was sailing out of Florida. Several people reached out to the cruise radio tip line to tell us about what had happened and give us some details. And it sounds like several services on board the ships were impacted because it was an electrical fire. So like the elevators, the lights, things like that were impacted. Ultimately, though, it doesn't seem to have impacted the ship's itinerary, as they arrived as scheduled at Ocean Key, which is their private island, and they were able to do some necessary repairs there. And Doug, this all leads me to a very burning question. Is it K or Key?
Well, the spelling C-A-Y is traditionally pronounced Key in the Bahamas, so that's what I call it, but you get pushback either way.
So I guess we can just call it whatever we want.
Yeah, exactly. Just get corrected, right?
Complain.
Yeah.
Either way, people are going to complain, so we can just do what we want.
As you mentioned, listeners and readers have been giving me play-by-play on our tip line, which is tips@cruiseradio.net if you ever have one. But they were saying as of noon yesterday, not everything was fully restored. Like they were asking people, hey, if you have to use the elevator, you can take it. Otherwise, save it for people who need to use it.
A little bit of forced exercise,
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in the world for a person coming from the buffet.
And some of the guests aboard one Royal Caribbean ship got a bit of a shock when they woke up to a flooded hallway.
I have to imagine that if I woke up and I walked out of my room and there was water pouring from the ceiling, I would freak out, you would immediately think, oh my God, we're sinking. But when it happened on Allure of the Seas, it turned out to be a simple matter of a pipe bursting. But as you can imagine, it caused a bit of a stir. Actually, you don't have to imagine, because it was all captured by a passenger whose name I'm about to massacre, Joshua Esquenazi, and he posted it on his TikTok account. What I really like about this is, instead of making a huge deal about it and being like, oh my God, look, the ship looks like it's sinking, he went out of his way to talk about what a great job the Allure's crew did in, getting it taken care of as soon as possible, moving people who were in impacted staterooms to new staterooms. Thank goodness, I guess, that it wasn't, one of those sailings that we talk about that's 120% booked, because that might have created a problem when it came to moving these guests. But they apparently did a great job in handling this situation. On the plus side, the ship is going to be heading to dry dock early in 2025, and it's supposed to undergo some pretty extensive renovations before it rolls back out. I'm betting that one of those renovations will involve replacing some of those pipes. But all's well that ends well.
And if you have a future trip booked on Norwegian Cruise Line, you might want to pay close attention to this story, because they've canceled almost 36 sailings.
Yeah, it's not all that unusual for a cruise line to cancel a sailing for one reason or another. And it's also not that unusual for them to cancel future sailings, especially far-flung future. They might get a charter. There's a whole bunch of reasons that they might do it. What is a little unusual here is how much we've seen Norwegian canceling. This latest batch comes on top of a previous batch of cancellations, and it involves them taking a closer look at their sailings and kind of changing the deployments, maybe moving ships around a little bit. We'll see as they announce what's going on with these ships. But right now, we've seen a bunch of sailings that were just canceled for late 2025 and early 26. The latest batch focuses on 3 ships: Norwegian Bliss, Encore, and Breakaway. So if you're booked on one of those in the future, pay attention to what we're about to say. The impacted sailings fall between November 25 and January 26th, January of 26 for Encore, between November of 2025 and March of 2026 for the Bliss. And over on Breakaway, it's sailings from January and February of 2026. Again, end of 2025, beginning of 2026. So there's a lot of time. On the one hand, that's far enough down the line that it gives people plenty of time to change their reservations. But if you look at the months of those sailings, a lot of them are going to fall during the holidays, Christmas and New Year's in particular, which is a time when people do really plan their trips in advance, because maybe they're planning family reunions or, something special for the holidays. So there's going to be a lot of people who probably are going to have their plans changed because of this. It could be a real pain. Norwegian is, of course, offering a full refund for anybody who was booked on these sailings, as well as a 10% future cruise credit. But like I said, if you have something booked at the end of 2025 or the beginning of 2026, really take a look if it's on Norwegian and make sure that you are not one of the people who is being impacted by this deployment. And of course, keep an eye out in the coming weeks and months to see what they're doing with these ships and where they're going to go, what kind of itineraries they're going to offer.
And we'll end things on a positive note here. If you own stock in Royal Caribbean, well, congratulations, because you'll be getting a slightly delayed holiday gift.
That's right. The cruise line's board of directors just voted to approve a quarterly dividend of 55 cents per share, which is up from the previous amount, which was 40 cents per share that was offered in September. If you don't own stock in the company, you can still get in on this, as the dividend will be paid to anyone who is on record as owning stock as of December 27th. Of course, it's worth noting that a single share of the stock will, as of this recording, set you back nearly $250. So, invest $250, get 55 cents. So, may not be the most sound financial advice. But if you are someone who has Carnival or has Royal Caribbean stock and has had it for a while, you are going to get a nice dividend here. And that's on top of some of the other benefits that people who own like 100 shares or more get. This is further proof of just how well the cruise industry is bouncing back, because you'll recall that back in March of 2020, as we were dealing with the industry-wide shutdown, Royal stopped paying dividends at all as it dealt with the financial fallout from the shutdown. So in September of this, just this past September, they started once again paying dividends, and now they are increasing the dividend, like I said, from 40 cents to 55 cents per share. So, good news. It's always nice to be able to report that cruisers are getting something.
This week's question comes from Elena in Bismarck, South Dakota. She says, you recently discussed the proposed tax hike on cruise passengers arriving Mexico, and you said you'd update us if there was more to the story. So, any update?
Well, in fact, Elena, there is. Thanks for writing. Yes. So we talked about the fact that Mexico wanted to charge $42 per person upon arrival at their ports, and that this was the proposal was that it would go into effect on January 1st of 2026. Obviously, the cruise lines protested this. That is a very big tax, and it also wasn't necessarily going toward where these things usually go. Usually they go toward the improvement of infrastructures in the ports or to support, things that are kind of somehow related to cruising. This was going to, a large percentage of this was going to be going to other things, including the military. So, under any circumstances, I think the cruise lines would have protested such a huge hike. In this case, what's ended up happening is that while the tax of $42 is still slated to go to be implemented, it will not now happen until July 1st. They've gotten a deferment of 6 months. Will something happen between now and July 1st that changes Mexico's mind on this? Will they see, because of this plan to do it in July, will we see cruise lines saying, okay, well, then as of July, we are going to be shifting some of our sailings to go someplace else that's not going to charge our customers $42 per person? We could see, we were just talking a little bit ago about Norwegian sort of shifting ships around and doing some redeployments. That was not related to this, but we could, as a result of this, see various cruise lines, taking a closer look at where they're going, where their passengers want to go, and how their passengers are reacting to this new tax, which, if you're a family of four, $42 per person, that's a nice little chunk of change to be suddenly added on to the cost of your cruise fare. So, as I said, as of now, it's delayed until July 1st. Whether it actually gets implemented in July, only time will tell.
As always, staff writer Richard Sims, thanks for being here. A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Just back from a cruise? Let's talk about it. Email Doug at cruiseradio.net.
Earlier this year, Joe took a cruise on Holland America's Oosterdam. He joins us on the line. How you doing, Joe?
Good to be here, Doug.
11 nights out of Athens and a major milestone for you.
It's our 50th wedding anniversary.
Nice.
And we wanted to do something a little special. It had been 5 years since we had been on a cruise, a combination of COVID and then a lot of family matters. So just made sure I timed it and found one that matched our anniversary date. And we really enjoy Holland America, and we enjoyed the last time we went on a med cruise. So everything lined up perfectly.
That flight is no joke from LA over to Athens, a dozen plus hours or so. How did that work out for you?
I think our travel time in total was supposed to be 15 hours. It wound up being 17 because the connection in Heathrow was 2 hours late. But nonstop from LA to Heathrow on British Air, and then British Air Heathrow to Athens.
I'm curious. I was in Athens in March, and the customs was a mess. There was only one customs agent working for 3 planes that landed, 3 wide-body planes at the same time. Was it pretty fast when you were going through the customs at the Athens airport?
It was a breeze. I mean, this is with Heathrow, with UK not being part of EU anymore. Mm-hmm. Their lines and arrows are a little different, just maneuvering from one section in Heathrow to the other. And then Athens, it was pretty much hi, welcome, stamp, and we were in. That was incredibly smooth.
Yeah, very nice. Any pre-cruise time in Athens before your sailing?
Yeah, we spent 3 nights, and since we got in late, we had 2 days to spend in Athens. We had been there before, but the Acropolis is just something you have to see every time you go. So we had made arrangements for that, and then pretty much spent the rest of the time just kind of strolling around, enjoying food, and it's kind of acclimating ourselves to the time change. The one thing that has happened, and you talk about cruise ships and over tourism and all this other stuff, you can't just walk up to the Acropolis anymore like you could years ago. You got to buy tickets.
Yeah.
And I bought them well in advance. We were there at 9:30 for a 10 o'clock entry. The line at the ticket window was about an hour at that point, and the first entry they were selling was at like 2 p.m. that day.
Unreal. You make your way after a couple of days in Athens. You make your way to embark the cruise in Athens on Oosterdam. How was the embarkation process for you?
It was good. My taxi driver showed up a little early at the hotel. We got there pretty quickly. They had us in holding pen number 1 and then brought us into the cruise terminal. There were a number of ships there, so there was a little bit of congestion with lines for Holland America, crisscrossing lines for some other cruise line inside the terminal. All in all, from taxi to stateroom was probably about 30 minutes.
Before we get on the ship here, I actually want to back up because every time I air a show of a review, someone doing a med cruise, I always get emails asking, how do you get around? So how did you get around once you landed in Athens and you were going to the hotel? Was it a shuttle service? Was it a prearranged service, or how did you do it?
Yeah, I bought the transfer package. When I had the thing put together, I had the transfer package, and interestingly, they would transfer me from the airport to the hotel and from the hotel back to the airport at the end, but they didn't have the pieces for the cruise. So I just went online and booked a taxi ahead of time. It worked out. It worked out really well to get back to the cruise port. But I had the transfer from in the package I bought from the airport to the hotel.
Oosterdam has a couple of years on it. What were your impressions when you walked on board this time?
We like Holland America because it's understated. It doesn't have, it's not an amusement park, and that's not kind of our thing. But you enter in the lower level, you get up to your room. There's no fancy atrium, but it's clean. It was clean. It looked as familiar and as fresh as the last time we were on one of the Vista level ships. We had a standard veranda stateroom. It was clean. It was ready. USB ports all over the place. Room on the balcony. The whole ship, they keep it clean. It's got 20-something years on it, and there's little bits of rust here and there, but that comes with age. It gives it a little bit of personality. You
mentioned you had a balcony room. So in your balcony stateroom through your 11 nights, how was it throughout the entire voyage?
It was great. I mean, we had our usual routine is after we come back from the port, I'll go jump in the jacuzzi and my wife will go sit out in the veranda, read a book, and just kind of relax when we go out to dinner. There was enough room. They actually had put a second little footrest out there. Usually before there was only one, but there was enough room for the 2 semi-recliners, a table, and some wine. So we were perfectly good. Nothing inside looked old. It looked very fresh. Traditional Holland America. When you come in, you're not going to be overwhelmed by an atrium or anything. You're just simply going to be greeted and go upstairs.
So let's talk about the food. We'll start at the top the Lido deck. How was that?
It was fine. That had virtually no change from last time we were on Holland America. Really wasn't crowded. We just had food there the first day when we got on, as well as the 2 sea days, and then breakfast every morning that there was a port call. But it was a good selection, good circulation. Never really had a problem finding a table. They did have some pizza there, but at first I was kind of disappointed because I went around looking for the New York Pizza Cafe, couldn't find it, and I asked, and they said, "Oh no, we don't have it on this ship."
What is it? The Dive-In Burgers though is out there.
Yeah, the Dive-In Burgers was out there. The wait was about 30 minutes to get a hamburger, but
okay.
You order it and go with your wife to go find food for her and some desserts and come back and it's ready. So that was good.
Yeah. Outside of the Lido area, the main dining room, how was your experience in there? And what time dining did you have throughout the 11 nights?
Well, we do the anytime dining, basically timing it to when we're going to be back from port, some relaxation time. And our first night dinner, we really liked the table. It was dead center in the back We're introverts. We like to sit by ourselves. It was, one layer back from the window, dead center. Wait staff was good. So on the way out, I asked the girl if we could get that table every night, and she set up reservations for us every night we wanted to eat there. Same time, same table. And, it seemed like it was just reserved for us because no matter what time we checked in early ahead of our reservation time or whatever, they just said, go right back. It was all set. So that was great. Food wise, that's the one thing I did notice. The meat options were less than they were 5 years ago. And the quality of the cuts, I'd say, were less than 5 years ago. But, there's still a great variety. And you had that same combination of old standards that were there every night and then fresh port-related or just variety items on the menu as well. But that's the one area I did notice where there was change and kind of cost control, I guess, from 5 years ago, was that the quality of the meat wasn't quite what it was before.
Joe, I'm curious, and I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank. But when I sailed on Koningsdam and I had anytime dining, do you check into it? Like, do you have to check into the app, or can you just go straight to the dining room?
They have one line for any timers
that's right.
are just walking up, and they have one line for reservations.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we just got one line for reservations, and that was it.
Any specialty dining on this 11-night cruise?
Oh yeah, could not ignore Pinnacle Grill.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have talked about it before. No, I didn't get the half a cow. We just got the regular fillets. But I don't know. Have you ever had the maple bacon clothesline?
Yeah, I got it last month for the second time. Yeah,
that is the most decadent thing on the face of the earth. The
baby tongs that come with it, and you have the pickle that come. Yeah, it's just all the presentation, the taste, everything is just spot on.
Oh, it's great, and the food there was excellent. The food there was no difference from previous cruises. But yeah, we were kind of both looking forward to that bacon maple.
Absolutely. Did you do canaletto?
No, we didn't this time. If it's thrown in as a freebie, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You're going to Rome. You're going to Italian ports.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need?
Yeah, exactly. 100% with you on that one. All right, well, let's talk about the entertainment on this 11-night cruise. How was it? How did it stack up?
I would have no idea. We spend our days in the port. We have nice leisurely dinner after some resting. And the only time we ventured for anything else was listening to the port talks that they had, upcoming for the various days. You have dinner at like 8 o'clock, a couple of strolls around the ship. That kind of was it. The best entertainment was the night we went by the Stromboli volcano, and everybody was out watching that, and it did put on a good show.
Yeah, the first time I saw that, it was so mesmerizing. Love it out there. Speaking of walking around and walking through the casino, horrible segue, but how was the smoke situation in and around it?
Casino, you kind of just walk by it. You don't have to actually muscle through it to get from port to stern, and I didn't notice any smoke or anything. It just seemed fine.
I know these med cruises are very port intensive, but any sea days on here?
Yeah, we did have 2 sea days. Mm-hmm. One of them, the captain kept telling us the seas were rough, but you never would have noticed it. It was smooth. Nice cruising speed. The one thing I like about the Vista class ships is that the promenade is wide enough where they actually have space for deck chairs, and you can actually walk and spread your elbows. Where on the Koningsdam, the promenade is relatively narrow. It never really felt crowded anywhere on the sea days. I was able to go out in the back of the ship, grab a deck chair, sit in the jacuzzi, read, relax. My wife enjoying the veranda. Even the Lido at noon wasn't overly crowded. You could still find a seat, and we were sailing at slightly over 100% occupancy.
Okay. I was going to ask you, does this ship, I know a lot of the other 2 interviews I just did, one was from MSC and one was from Norwegian, they operate that ferry schedule where guests kind of hop on and hop off throughout the cruise. Like they'll take it from Barcelona round trip or Rome round trip or whatever. Was yours like that, or was it just one embarkation point where everyone embarked at the same time and one debark point?
Well, it was an interesting one in that regard, because we did talk to somebody who had to get special approval from the cruise line and the captain to debark in Rome because of some of their travel schedule changed. But from what I understood, our departure from Athens was actually the turnaround point for people that were doing a 22-day cruise from Barcelona to Athens with some different ports, and then turn around to go back to Barcelona. And when we arrived at Barcelona, a number of people that got on at Athens were doing a 22-day cruise, turning around doing it the other way. So it was kind of interesting because it wasn't one of those where it was a shuttle, but it also was one of those where they cleared the ship entirely at either the embark or the debark.
Okay.
So there were people getting off the ship in Barcelona that didn't go through customs, and there were people that did go through. It was an interesting mix and match.
Well, let's talk about your ports of call on this 11-night cruise. Tell us about your first port, your highlight, then we'll move to the next one.
Our first was Katakolon in Greece, which is basically the stop-off point for the ancient Olympia site we had been to before, and that again is kind of a one and done. So we took a excursion out to an olive oil farm, which, was a little bit of a sales pitch, but olive oil tasting. And the lunch they provided was fantastic. So it was a great way to spend the afternoon because Katakolon's kind of small. It was on a Sunday, and a number of things were shut down on that day, including the winery that I wanted to go to. So we did that excursion, and it was a good 4 or 5 hours, great food, and got to see some of the countryside.
Sometimes these excursions can be, I don't want to say glorified sales pitches, but I'm going to, because when I was in Ephesus, I guess Kushadashi was the port, but we went to Ephesus, and on the way back, we stopped at this
Turkish carpet.
People were walking out of there with $20,000 rugs. I was like, what?
But the key is they give you free wine.
They really get you, in the mood. There's nothing about a sales pitch on the way back where it's, we're going to go in for some Turkish wine and some Turkish coffee and a 45-minute sales pitch.
There you go.
Yeah. So your next port after Katakolon was what?
It was Sarande in Albania. And that one, this is interesting because Holland America has kind of seemed to, and maybe it's the rest of the industry, but since we just like Holland America, they've brought down the prices on their excursions where it's not the big ripoff it used to be. Because I tried pricing out some of these things independently. And I guess Katakolon, I was getting close to $300 a person for something we did for $100 through the cruise line. And in Albania, we took a trip out to some archaeological sites, and then it was again lunch this was at a restaurant, and again it was really good food, and it was supposed to be 3 hours, but the tour guide, he was enjoying himself, so we had about 5 hours. He added some additional stops on, and overall he was great. Interesting because that country is still really coming out of being under a dictator and the Iron Curtain. It's got a ways to go. He was explaining all the stuff that they still would have to do to get presence to be able to be in the EU. Government just took everybody's property, and that's one of the things they have to sort out before they could join the EU. Then we got kind of going more. We had the cruise day, and then it was Valletta in Malta. My wife and I were pretty much museum and church people. Those are the things we like to see the most. And so we caught a couple of basilicas in Valletta, one the co-cathedral and one associated with a high school here in California that I'm on the board for. And then we just saw some of the local museums, and it was just really great. Weather was perfect, like we said. Getting down in the middle of a town square and just having lunch and sitting back with an Aperol Spritz and enjoying the environment. Just there were really beautiful.
Tons of photos. In fact, I just interviewed someone who stopped there, and he said the same thing. It was actually their highlight of their 8-night cruise was Valletta. Yeah, that's awesome. After Valletta, where'd you go?
It was supposed to be Taormina, Italy, but we wound up going to Messina instead.
Okay.
That was a tender port, and there was a big MSC 6,700 capacity ship there that we were playing tag with on a number of the ports, and so they wound up aiming us to Messina instead, which was great because the town was just great just to walk through. We just explored Messina. We hiked up in the hills. We like to find these little, out of the way places, and we were hiking around. We came across another little church up in the hills, and there was a wedding just about to start. We got there just as the bride was arriving, and we kind of watched all the excitement of the wedding and everything, and then just continued on down around, and again, enjoyed the squares, the local, and the environment.
After Messina?
Then Naples. 20,000 cruise people were departing or debarking at the same time. That was a circus. Again, having been to Naples previously, we did not join the 16,000 that went to Pompeii. I had tickets for the National Archaeological Museum and just jumped on the metro as soon as we got off the ship, went up to the museum, and then in the afternoon I had tickets for the San Severo Chapel with the Veiled Christ statue. So we did a Neapolitan pizza lunch in between those two things and walked back to the metro and got back the ship on time.
Have you made it to the famous pizza restaurant there?
We, last trip, went to where one of them was, and when we looked at the line going a block and a block and a block and a block, we just went to one across the street, sat out outside the table, watched everybody continue to stand in line where we had probably equally great pizza.
Yeah.
I don't think you get bad pizza in Naples.
No, that's true. Yeah, for sure. Then after Naples, where'd you go?
That was Rome. Again, museums and churches. I had wanted one particular church that I had wanted to go see. So, we took the train from the port, Civitavecchia, got to the train station, and it didn't stop at Termini. It was the one closer to the Vatican. Took a taxi out to the Basilica that we wanted to spend some time at, and then kind of walked and ate our way back to the train station, caught the train back to Civitavecchia, and actually had dinner in town there before we got back on the ship.
Late departure, like at 10 o'clock or so?
Yeah, we didn't want to push it too late. We got the train back in time.
Yeah. It's a really nice a train ride, too, there. And I didn't realize how inexpensive the business class is. I think we paid like $13 one way for business class, and it had Wi-Fi and comfortable seats and everything.
Yeah, it's not bad. And it's quick. It beats the traffic or a bus or anything.
After Rome, what was up next?
The one I have trouble pronouncing, Ajaccio, I think Corsica.
Okay.
The hometown of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yep.
We, again, hit the cathedral and hit the Bonaparte home/museum. Just spent the rest of the time walking around the town, finding some good places to eat and kind of enjoying the ambience. Relaxing
trip so far, taking a couple of sites there, some good food, and go on to the next one, which was what in this case?
So it was supposed to be Villa France Semur, which is the tender port that would take us to a town that we could take a train to Nice. But again, there was that big MSC monster there. So we wound up tendering directly to Nice.
Okay.
And again, since I had planned that to be the place, we knew what time the cathedral was going to be open there, little museum, and just enjoyed walking around the town, finding food. Yeah, everything was very relaxing except for the 2 days I walked my wife's legs off. Rome was the worst. Rome was a good amount of walking. We averaged about 6 miles walking both in Rome and Naples.
Yeah.
So that kind of caught that one.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Where'd y'all go next?
Well, then we wound up C-Day and then back to Barcelona.
Barcelona. Actually, before we get to the post-cruise time, if you did any, let's do the embark or debark rather. How was debark in Barcelona?
That was excellently smooth, except for the one thing you can't calculate is exactly what time you're going to get off. So I did not reserve a taxi. I timed it perfectly for when to get off, but by the time the line then for a taxi was somewhat substantial. So we spent probably 45 minutes waiting for a taxi after we got off. But, we walked right off, found our bags, no customs. We started in the EU, we ended in the EU. That was a breeze. It was just in the taxi line. And I had, again, got tickets for one of the things we wanted to see for 11 o'clock, trusting that would give me enough time. And it did. We got to the hotel, still about 10, dropped off our bags and then walked over to the cathedral, as we enjoy looking at. But, we had a couple of days in Barcelona, and with the Cathedral of Barcelona, the Sagrada Familia, and that Park Güell, however you pronounce it, and the Picasso Museum. So we had all that lined up, and then kind of decompressed the rest of the time. The hotel was a good location, walking distance to everything, had a rooftop restaurant, bar, pool, and it was just nice way to unwind before having challenges with Iberia Airlines on the way home.
Oh, geez. Now, that Park Güell, is that the one that's kind of elevated above, I guess, the regular city, above the port and stuff, I guess you could say, above sea level?
Yeah, that's the one that's way up there. It's designed by Gout. You got to pay to get in. And again, with buying tickets in advance, I bought them in advance, and we got up there, it was sold out.
Wow. Yeah, it sure was pretty, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, that was. It's amazing to look at, and kind of. I don't know if you've ever in Los Angeles, if you've ever seen the Watts Towers.
Never have.
Were basically built by one guy just with scrap bottles and all sorts of other stuff. But parts of the Park Güell, the way all the tiles and everything were put together, it had that same kind of look where it was organized chaos. But when you get the whole thing together, it's amazing to look at.
I'm actually looking at the Watts Towers here right now, and I can see the resemblance.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, there's so many places to stay. Like, you could stay by the airport. You could stay in the, not Gotham, what is it called? Los Ramblas, I believe. Just a lot of different really hot pockets or hot spots to stay with a lot of activities around them and great restaurants in Barcelona. Where in the area did you stay for those couple nights?
It was the Gothic Quarter. And, it's one of those things, like I pulled out my notes, but I didn't pull out the itinerary with the hotel name. It started with a V, and I got to tell you, if I can find it on the iPad quickly, I will. But 5-minute walk to the cathedral, 10-minute walk to the metro. So no matter where we wanted to go, everything was just right there and easy. I will give the travel agent a lot of kudos for getting that set up for us right. Any
first-time tips you have for anyone who's either considering sailing a Mediterranean cruise or sailing Holland America line in the Med?
Well, I go back to the thing I kept repeating a couple of times. It's up here, just because I pulled it off in Athens. It was the Electra Hotel Athens, and it was right on Irmu Street. Athens Walk, and at the end at Barcelona, it was the Kimpton Vivadora. Those were both 4 or 5-star hotels, walking distance to everything. And you say, the metro system in Barcelona, you couldn't beat it. That worked out really well. First time advice, the thing I mentioned a couple times. It's not like it used to be. Whatever you want to go see, if you really want to see it, buy the tickets in advance. It's slowly becoming kind of like it was for other main attractions. You got to buy the tickets in advance because they're going to sell out, and you walk up and be disappointed when it's closed. That's kind of a bummer.
The biggest highlight of this cruise for y'all, what would it be?
It was all the little things. It really was the little things. It was watching that wedding at Messina, just kind of getting involved and walking the street life and the plazas and everything. Barcelona, learning how to eat tapas the right way, and was counting the toothpicks and everything. And we're watching a street performer group out in front of the cathedral one night when we were having dinner, and I got a feeling that it was really a pickpocket racket because all of a sudden 4 or 5 police cars popped up and shut down the whole operation. But there's just so much life on the streets in those cities. It's just enjoyable just to go out and be part of it.
I'm curious because you mentioned Rick Steves earlier. Do you follow his, did you pick up his Mediterranean guidebook, or did you pre-download any of his walking tours or podcasts before you went over there?
Yeah, we usually grab a couple of tour books in advance. In this case, we had things for most everything except Barcelona, so I went out and got one of those, and I download usually just the walking maps off the internet. Sorry, Rick, no additional revenue, but just download the maps and kind of get an idea. And between that, looking at the excursions that the cruise ship offers, looking at TripAdvisor, whatever, and then just kind of knowing what I want to see. And as I said, we're museum people, we're church people. My wife was a teacher for 20-something years. If a museum is supposedly a 2-hour time expenditure, I'll reserve 8 for that because we will look at everything in depth.
Yeah.
I didn't mention, the one thing I forgot to mention was the National Archaeological Museum in Naples, which was cool because that's where they put all the good stuff from Pompeii.
Well, in closing here, your final thoughts of Holland America's Oosterdam.
They still continue to hit our sweet spot of, I guess I'd say, understated tranquility, good food, nice surroundings, never felt crowded, and it was a great way to celebrate 50th wedding anniversary.
Well, Joe, my friend, congratulations on 50 years, and thanks for sharing this vacation with us, my friend. Good talking to you.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,